What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be looking at the day 1 usage stats of the World Championships, but most specifically the top 12 of Pokemon that were being used. And this is a graphic posted by Play Pokemon, so if you want to check it out, you can find it within their Twitter, but I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so this way you guys can get a better view of the numbers. As I record this video, it's actually very, very late or very early, depending on where you are in the world, right? And as I do this video, it's pretty much the end of day 1, with the last match about to play in a second. But I really wanted to spotlight this and just get a little bit of discussion out there and just discuss some of the things that we saw, not only on stream but just like overall in terms of these placements in the usage stats. So first of all, I want to look at the top 3 here, and I told you guys, I literally have been telling you guys this for a while now. So first of all, let's start. For the longest time, we pretty much had the notion that Fluttermane and Urshifu would be number 1 and 2 in the entire format. And while that is still true to an extent, but look at Iron Hands sneaking in all of a sudden at that number 2 slot. And what did we say about Iron Hands in a lot of our videos? We said Iron Hands is the best Pokemon in Regulation D because I call it the glue of the format. It just fits well on so many different teams. All right, whether it's a Trick Room team, a Tailwind team, a Balance team, it fits everywhere. And its moveset and the utility it provides is good into almost the entire meta, right? Especially, thanks to terrestrialization, right? So again, if you just look at Iron Hands in terms of what it can give you, right? And just in terms of some of its movesets and items, so this way we can understand why it was able to sneak in and crack the top 2. So of course you have Fake Out Pressure, right? Which of course allows you to, set up potential Tailwinds, Trick Room teams, Dragon Dances, some setup play like Nasty Plot, for example, or maybe force repositioning from your opponent, right? Because they don't want to take that Fake Out, and then they'll be out of position the next turn. So that's one thing. Of course you have Wild Charge, and then you have a standard move here, either Drain Punch, or you might have even seen Close Combat on some of these teams. It really just depends on the set. But then from there, you could also even see something like Swords Dance with Protect in these Iron Hands teams. And then they might even run Safety Goggles. They could even run an Assault Vest. Again, the Assault Vest gives you longevity against something like a Fluttermane, to be able to survive that. The Safety Goggles let you get around the Mungus. And then from here, you might even see Terra Fire, Terra Grass, depending on if you don't want to get burned or, you don't want to have to suffer at the hands of a Mungus, like we said. So lots of different ways that you're able to see the Iron Hands. And then it always has the tech move of Heavy Slam, to really pin that Fluttermane slot because, on the physical end, it just really isn't all that bulky, right? This is a very, very standard Iron Hand set. And then from here, if you just look at the graphic, right, we mentioned the Heavy Slam into the Fluttermane. We have Wild Charge for the Urshifu and the Tornadoes here, right? Super effective electric moves, almost forcing them to tear if they want to survive it. The Amoonguss, we don't have super effective great moves against it, right? But Amoonguss also has a difficult time, if you are Terra Grass. Now, granted, it can just spam you with Pollen Puff, but you have ways around that, and it'll take Amoonguss a very, very long time to even get that going, right? And then even Chien-Pao here, you have Drain Punch, to recover your health, and super effective against this. It's an Ice Dark type. You also have potential Heavy Slam plays into this. Landorus is a very, very good answer into the Iron Hands, which is why you'll see Landorus on a lot of these teams, and this is why it's also in 7th place. And we'll talk more about Landorus in a second, and we'll explain why it even rose a little bit in usage. But even against Heatran here, you have Drain Punch against that, a good solid fighting move. Rillaboom also gets a little bit more interesting, more or less a neutral matchup there, maybe even less favorable because, Woodhammer just does so much in grassy terrain. The Chi-Yu, again, if you have an Assault Vest set, you can able to survive that Drain Punch. Look at how much fighting moves there is on some of this stuff. Even the Ursaluna is also susceptible to a Drain Punch, unless it goes for a terrestrializing to its Ghost type, which of course, raises more questions and more answers into play. But the Goldango here is another one that could do well as well, but I digress. You can't click a Drain Punch into a Ghost type here, but the Steel move is not very effective anyway against you as an Electric type, so you can still technically Wild Charge this, right? Of course, not dealing a whole lot of damage, but overall, just against the top 12 here, Iron Hands is very, very good. It's a great balance mod. It's super bulky. Again, like we mentioned, you can slap it onto any different team, and then the sets that it can run just can really make a difference in how it's being played, especially against the mirror matchup. Like, does this hands have does it have Swords Dance, or does it have a straight up assault vest set? So you can definitely understand and you see how useful it is. I've even seen like some tech options with like Ice Punch here, right? That's also really good into Landorus, right? Like we mentioned, because Landorus does really well into Iron Hand. So Ice Punch is also a very good tech option in that regard. So, in some cases, against the mirror, you can even see Stomping Tantrum on this Iron Hands. Again, like we mentioned, for that mirror, it's also really good into like something like a Goldango, another steel type that doesn't, it does struggle a little bit against, right? But overall, again, you can understand and see why the Iron Hands is doing so well, right? But let's talk about Urshifu next. So Urshifu, right, even though it's number 3, it's a close number 3, there's been a cool set that has been running around, and that is the Swords Dance set. And we saw this in like the first game, not first game, but really the first round of the World Championship. So if we just put the Urshifu here, let's take away the Iron Hands. So basically this Swords Dance set, so some players have said, okay, you know what, we're gonna go Surging Strikes, Aqua Jet, we'll give up the close combat and go Swords Dance, and then just click Protect in this last slot, right? And then the cool item here was actually the Safety Goggles, right? And what this ends up doing is you're able to pretty much, get around Amoonguss, not get spored, right? And ignore the redirection, and then just Surging Strikes the partner slot, right? And then by doing this, you don't have to go for your Terra Grass Terrestrialization, which is something that we've done on the channel to get around Amoonguss. Now you can just say, you know what, I'm going to keep my Terra Water option, right? And then that removes my Flutter Mane weakness altogether, right? And then at the same time, now I can get around Amoonguss with the Safety Goggles set, right? But also the EV spreads will generally be adjusted. So previously, a pretty premier Urshifu set was something like this, where you go Adamant 156 with something like Mystic Water, and that does a lot of damage, right? And then you go to this 140 speed tier mark, okay? Because even when you scarf it, you can outspeed a Timid Fluttermane at +1, right? But overall, even Undertale, when you outspeed a Lecky, but Lecky's not really that relevant in the format at the moment. But 140 is just magical speed tier number, and then you just did some investment like this, which would allow you to survive the Dragonite E-Speed boosted by Chien-Pao, and then you just dump a whole lot into special defense, right? But now what ends up happening is you can still get doubled up from the Dragonite and the Chien-Pao combination with E-Speed and the Sucker Punch, right? So now what you end up having to do is you have to kind of take away from its attack a little bit, still go to the first bump here, but invest more into your HP stat, something like this, where now you can probably even potentially survive it. And maybe you can even consider dropping some of this speed, right? You can drop it as far as maybe even like right here, still have like this good magical VGC speed tier number, 127, 126, 125, within this range, because again, that'll outspeed Modest Fluttermane, right, if you are at a +1 boost. And then from here, you can just dump more into your Spadef like this, and then that'll help you even more against like stuff like Fluttermane, Dazzling Gleams, shenanigans, or boosted Moonblasts in that sense, right? So they've gone slower. They've gone a little bit less hard hitting. They've gone a little bit more bulkier. That's because, again, you have Swords Dance, right? So you don't need as much attack investment, right? So I don't need to be 156 or 236 attack investment. I'm going to get all the damage I need from Swords Dance. So let's take away from the attack and let's invest more into our bulk, maybe a little bit less speed, right? And then from there, you have a pretty hard hitting Aqua Jet Urshifu that can just bypass Protect. It's actually so funny. Right. If it were up to me, like I can leave it like this. I still kind of like a little bit more speed on my Urshifu. So if you still like this, a spread like this, that's okay. Otherwise, you can definitely still go with 140 speed tier, and then just dump the rest, something like this. Ideally, just to potentially leave the double up here. But again, if you want to make it a little bit slower, you can definitely do that. But from here, this is still like very much adequate. But again, as I understand that the Swords Dance means you don't need as much attack investment, you can invest more into your bulk stat, right? So that was pretty cool. All right. Then if you notice, there is no Dragonite, in the top 12, interestingly enough, right? It actually fell out even before the World Championships started. We did a whole video on usage stats for, July, and Dragonite was on the outside looking in. It went from like within the top 10 in July to, I think it was 13th place as far as like tournaments were concerned from Limitless. So that was interesting to look at. And what is really taking its place is actually the Landorus, right? And I'll show you a sample team that was made by our friend Kabunger. Okay, and it's just an open team sheet. So it looks like this. And this is a very typical squad that you also probably saw on stream. Okay, but look at this. So normally on a team like this, imagine there's no Landers here, but look at this. Fluttermane, Urshifu, Chien-Pao, along with Heatran and Rillaboom. Remember how you used to see Dragonite on a team like this? Dragonite, Chien-Pao, Ursh, right? With the Fire Water Grass core from here and then a Fluttermane. Yeah, that was a very standard team, and that's still a good team. But now we've also seen the addition of something like Landorus in place of the Dragonite slot, because now you give the entire team Intimidate, okay? Which is great because Fluttermane very much appreciates the Intimidate support, as does the rest of these options, right? Because now you can actually live things. And then from here, you have a good support for the Fluttermane because, again, Fluttermane's suffering at the hands of like steel types and poisons. Landorus can help you deal with that, especially when you have like Stomping Tantrum pressure, really good against Iron Hands. Because if you just look at this team has a hard time dealing with Iron Hands, unless you have to rely on like Rillaboom here with like Stomping Tantrum. But let's get something a little bit stronger. Let's get Intimidate on the Iron Hands. Let's get Stomping Tantrum pressure against it. And then we have a much better matchup going into that one, right? And then U-turn, another pivot option. So now you're a little bit more flexible in how you position. Whereas Dragonite is kind of just stuck there with his choice band, just clicking E speeds, right? And if it's not a great move to be locked in, then you kind of have to like hard switch it, and then you're a little bit more out of position. Whereas the Landorus, you can outspeed an opposing Fluttermane anyway with this Choice Scarf set, and then just go for this U-turn, all right? Or hit Urshifu's hard with Terra Blast, and now when you have Terra Flying, you can actually survive the Mystic Water Surging Strikes. So in that sense, that's also pretty good. And then of course you get Rock Slide hacks, and who doesn't like Rock Slide hacks, right? So Landorus was a very, very nice addition here, and on a team like this where you adjust the standard 6 to now something like this, and now you see the rise in Landorus there, and overall, almost cracking the top 5 here. This is 7th place here. Heatran and Rillaboom, no surprises here, but actually the Rillaboom still continuing to rise. Overall, just goes to show you that even though it lost Grassy Glide, it's still an excellent Pokemon. Again, with Rillaboom comboing well with the Urshifu, you still have Fake Out Pressure, you still have Wood Hammer, you have U-turn for your pivot move if you get intimidated, and then here either something like Knock Off to remove a key item from an opponent. Great move against Cresselia, and then also you have Stomping Tantrum, which is also really good into something like a Goldango or another Iron Hands, like we said, right? So, and then you still have something against Urshifu's Surging Strikes, right? And that was pretty much the main reason why Rillaboom kind of rose a lot. We compared this with Amoonguss in our previous video, but dude, if you need something to one-shot Urshifu, you just go Rillaboom and click Wood Hammer, and then you don't really have to think too hard about it, right? Because now especially that they are a little bit bulkier, but that's not enough bulk to survive Wood Hammer, right? So it's really, really cool to see. Again, just imagine if this thing kept Grassy Glide. Dude, Rillaboom would be like top 3 usage without a doubt. Like I could see Urshifu being kicked out of here and then just and then Rillaboom moving up here. It's just super, super cool. All right, the other thing I also wanted to discuss is the Chien-Pao here. So what's also pretty cool about Chien-Pao, we've seen some adjustments from some players, and we've also done these adjustments ourselves. So yes, they are still, Focus Sash, but not only that, they are still 252 for the most part. Some have like some bulk, but that's a discussion for another time. But ideally, now they're going Adamant versus Jolly. And we talked about this in our team building videos, and it's nice to see that it's also being used in the World Championships. The reasoning that you can afford to go Adamant, there's a few reasons, is you understand and you're making the call that most of these Fluttermanes are super bulky, right? And by going for some bulk, okay, that means you're not going max speed. That means you're just investing, a minimal amount of speed, right? Because now what you're doing is you're trying to survive against an Adamant Chien-Pao, because now what these Chien-Pao teams are starting to do is basically they're just saying, look, I know that you're going bulky because you need to survive against my Sucker Punch, right? Because if this was just a straight 252 Flutter Mane, it's not optimal because this Chien-Pao just gets quick Sucker Punch and it's a very favorable to pick up the KO. Now what the Flutter Manes are saying is, okay, we'll invest in our bulk so we can survive said Sucker Punch and said Ice Spinner. But now the adjustment that Chien-Pao players are saying is, okay, look, you're going slower anyway. So that means I can also afford to go slower because I'm still going to be faster than you, even with my max speed adamant nature. And now I'm going to get more damage. So your damage calc that you just did is out the window. And now what I can also afford to do is instead of Icicle, Ice Spinner, which does, 80 damage, now I'm going to go for Icicle Crash, does more damage. Okay, so now if you calc for Ice Spinner, I'm going to try and ruin that calc a little bit more with Icicle Crash. And then at the same time, I'm also going to be running Crunch and then Protect. And some people, they either also run they may drop the Sacred Sword here. You might even just see Crunch and then Sacred Sword here without Protect. So Crunch is another good tech move. It's great into Cresselia, right? So this is another adaptation of Chien-Pao here. But now you get a chance for Flinch, right? With Icicle Crash, you get more damage, where you're ruining some of these jolly Chien-Pao calcs that maybe you did a defensive EV for, and then at the same time, Sucker Punch also just does more damage overall. And like we mentioned, Crunch is really good into the Cresselia matchup, so this is another good meta adaptation in that sense, right? But I think they're still pretty much Terra Ghost here. But now some Flutter Manes, again, you can still calc for Adamant Chien-Pao. This will do it. This is actually our spread that we put out in our Vento Team videos where we're able to survive Adamant Sucker Punch / Adamant the ice move here from the Chien-Pao. So at the same time, okay, cool. So we'll see how the Chien-Pao sets fare moving forward, but I just wanted to touch on that set in particular. And speaking of Cresselia, okay, if we take a look again at the usage stats, where is it? Yeah, I see Ursaluna here, but I don't quite see Cresselia, but I can't imagine it being too far behind. But what this means is probably Ursaluna is able to be slapped onto some balanced teams, without the Trick Room necessarily, just like Iron Hands is over here. But, Ursaluna is another great Pokemon that can do relatively well, especially, with Earthquake shenanigans, Swords Dance, Headlong Rushes. In that sense, it's a very, very strong option. Goldengo also within the top 12. This is no surprise, in that sense. It did fall off a little bit, in Regulation C, but now it's risen again. Just immunity into, something like Amoonguss is very, very much appreciated. And then at the same time, you're immune to the Urshifu close combat shenanigans. You can time a nice pivot. Trick, with the Choice Scarf or Choice Spec set, very, very good. Just overall, it just does so much damage with Make It Rain. And then as well as the Shadow Ball, two very, very strong moves against a Flutter Mane. And, with Flutter Manes now going for mostly Terra Fairy, for not only that defensive Terra, but also the offensive options, because you have stronger Dazzling Gleams and Moonblast. Now this Make It Rain will definitely, secure potential KOs here, right? Because it just does so much damage, especially after Choice Specs shenanigans here. Then you just have Trick, and then some coverage move here like Thunderbolt just to have something against an Urshifu, right? Filler slot. But you can also Scarf this thing like we mentioned, for more or less the same idea, where if you click Choice Scarf and they click Trick Room, now they have to be forced to switch out and reposition. Otherwise, they're just going to have a very, very fast Pokemon within Trick Room, right? So Goldengo, very, very useful, as we can see here in the usage stats here. But again, no surprises with Amoonguss here, as well as here, this is something to discuss. Chi-Yu has started to rise all the way, into the top 10. And originally in July it wasn't within the top 10, but then slowly people understood, okay, wait a minute, dude, Chi-Yu is still the GOAT, right? It's still so good, especially, with moves like Heat Wave, Dark Pulse, really good into Cresselia, by the way, because they can't count for everything. A lot of these Cresselias, they're going to be investing a lot into their physical bulk, into, let's just say something like this, which means they're taking away from their special defense. And now what we can do with Chi-Yu is take advantage of that and just say, now you're really weak to my Dark Pulse. And you can't count for everything. you know, this is for your Dragonite, Chien-Pao, or Urshifu shenanigans. But now I'm free to click Dark Pulse, and now I'm kind of chilling. And I also do well into Rillaboom. I do well into Amoonguss. I do well into Goldengo. And I combo well with Fluttermane. So it's no doubt that Chi-Yu can also do relatively well. And then, you know, Chien-Pao and also Ursaluna, these things are going for like Terra Ghost, which means you're a Dark type and you're going to do really well against Terra Ghost options. So in that sense, you also have, you know, that going for you, you know, in that respect. But no surprise here to see Chi-Yu within the top 10. It was only a matter of time until we did see it. But overall, again, you can also imagine some sets like Nasty Plot Chi-Yu, you know, especially next to Amoonguss Goldengo teams, they can also opt for that as well. And then just blowing something up immediately with Overheat, you know, just such a strong attack, you know, with Beads of Ruin, you know, just makes sense overall, and no surprise here in terms of its placement. But yeah, let me know what you think of the Day 1 World Championships thus far. I just wanted to touch upon some of these nice, intricate tech moves, tech changes, especially in regards to like EV spreads and whatnot, and just to show. It's interesting to see how some of these mons have been playing out in Day 1. All right. So hopefully now I can get some sleep, and then we'll take a look at what Day 2 brings. There is an Articuno that made Day 2. I will say that. So shout outs to Patrick Donegan for getting Articuno into Day 2. I like that. Our homie Neil is about to be 5-0. So shout outs to, you know, our good friend as well. And we got some other friends there doing relatively well in Day 1. But Day 2 is a whole nother ball game because you get another group of players coming in. Right, they're gonna enter the fray, and we'll just see what happens from there. All right, we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Enjoy the World Championships as we go into Day 2. Peace out, and have a good night or a good morning, depending on where you are.